Well, welcome everyone to Accounting Web's Insight Exchange briefing for August 2019. I'm John Stockdyke. We will be starting the official program in just a minute or two. We're going to make sure to give everyone plenty of time to get logged in and to signed up. So just stick with us. We have a full Insight Exchange team on hand to support you. In Bristol is our producer and client service manager, Hannah Samuel, assisted by client service manager, Susana Montero. We have Alma Claro, who's the Insight Exchange editor, most of you listening should know. And joining us for this session to give some editorial insights is Tom Herbert, the editor of Accounting Web. So we will be starting very shortly. And let me just see, Bristol, can you hear me? Is I coming through there, Bristol?
You're receiving you loud and clear, John. Great to be here.
Okay, and Balma, I think, is there with you. Are you seeing my screen, Tom? I'm seeing something slightly different, so I just want to check you're seeing the main heading.
I can see the briefing screen with my name up in lights, John.
Okay, your name, hopefully we should see the thing. Okay, I'm going to move. I think it's time to start. We've waited around enough, and we'll take things slowly to begin with, just get people introduced. Here is the agenda. Again, Tom and Bristol, can we see that okay there?
I can see the agenda, yes.
Excellent. Okay, and right. Again, welcome officially to the Accounting Web Insight Exchange webinar for August. I'm John Stockdyke, the head of Insight, and I'll be starting things off today. I'll take you through the agenda. As I said, the main point of this exercise is to help you get the most out of the Insight Exchange service you can. We think in particular that helps by giving us some insights into how your content's performing, but also looking forward to what we think are the topics are going to dominate discussions and debate on the site in August. So I'll be showing you a couple of things there to give you some ideas with your content for next month. Then Tom is here. He'll be telling us what he's planning for the month and beyond. There's quite a lot to grapple with. Then there's another. We've just completed all our surveys and awards exercises, so I'm beginning to bring forward some insights from the underlying research. So I'll present a few thoughts about that ahead of the big excitement next month, which will be the Software and Practice Awards, the Accounting Excellence Awards. And finally, to wrap things up, Alma will be showing us some top secret techniques and tips to help you get more out of these content management system. It is generally fairly easy to use, but just some of those icons on the menu can allow you to do some quite interesting things. And finally, let me remind you, this is an interactive session. Really, if you've got any questions or anything, it doesn't have to be about what we're talking about, just any aspect of the Insight Exchange service, we're here to help. Susana is monitoring your questions as we go along. She'll pick them up and throw them at us and share them with us. So anytime you want as we go along, raise your questions, and we will try and leave time at the end to pick up anything we haven't been able to cover as we go along. So I think those are the formalities. Let's move on to the first section, where what do we think is on the Accounting Web radar? Now, this chart might be vaguely familiar to some of you who used to get the PDF monthly reports. We've essentially reconstructed the tag tracker, the emerging tags trend. And this is, at the moment, this is just an experimental thing I've constructed by hand. I've put through a request to have that included in the IX dashboard. So that we have to prove that we actually have to be able to construct it in Google Studio. And what you're seeing here is we've taken the top performing tags over the past 3 months and filtered them by the ones that have grown most rapidly over the past 3-month period. So this is our way of things like VAT, and as you can see on the chart, the turquoise line. There's some hardy perennials that always dominate proceedings. That's Making Tax Digital. But by looking for the fastest growers, these are the ones that Tom and I keep our eyes out for, because it's things that, if we can see them emerging up, rising rapidly, or even burning slowly, we know and can anticipate that they're probably likely to continue into the next month. So that's what the chart. What this chart tells you, if you were around last month or read the content report, is we were saying how in May and June we felt we were a bit of a Making Tax Digital lull, and we were getting feedback from HMRC and practitioners that this was the case. Well, you can see that happening in our June figures with the turquoise line. But then inexorably, and this started rising towards the end of July, and we know we were heading for the 7th of August deadline for the first set of April to June VAT returns. So they came through. They peaked at the 7th of August. So actually, and Tom may bear me out on this, we think this is pretty close to the peak. We've reached peak Making Tax Digital, at least for the 2019 edition. But there's still going to be niggles and issues bubbling under up, and particularly with the early September VAT returns as they're filed, and into October there'll probably be another little spurt then. But I think leading up to the 7th of August, I would anticipate that is the highest level we're going to get for anxiety, questions, and debate around that. It will slowly subside. So we're over that peak now, and what our early warning emerging trend radar is showing, that we get over one compliance shock, and it's like buses, there are a couple more coming to bite us, and they're already beginning to cause concern amongst the Accounting Web members. The yellow line and the blue line, that's actually fed specifically by one particular article that was Rebecca Cave's coverage of the draft finance bill, and included the off-payroll roles for the private sector. So that's been a lingering concern and worry for us, but now we have the detailed clauses. We know exactly the shape that the measure is going to take, and it's already leapt up into the next. It's the next big shock coming our way on the 1st of October, I believe. Tom, is it the 1st or the 31st of October?
1st of October, John.
1st of October, excuse me. I should spend more time on tax compliance issues. So that's the next one that will be concerning the. I lie, Tom. The off-payroll rules are in the finance bill. They're going to be the 1st of April next year. So even though it's further away, it's the one causing the most concern, at least in July. The one that is the 1st of October is our red line, which has been rising steadily since May, and that's construction. And it's those construction debates and discussions are very much linked, and I did the analysis, showed this, to VAT. So it's the reverse charge for construction companies that are particularly burdensome and worrying. That's the one that's coming in on the 1st of October. Now, the software vendors and accountants have all had to apply the reverse charge in other industries, cash-sensitive industries and the like, and mobile phones, things where there's high-value topics. But getting this across to the average construction subby is definitely going to be a challenge for the profession. So that's the red line taking care of things. And finally, the European Union. I wonder why that's beginning to increase in things. So we are now talking in terms in-house about the B word. But Tom, that's the picture as I see it. The green line, I think, the orange line, that was an ethics article about fraud. You're probably more familiar with that. Is that something you'll be planning around, or was that one a little bit of a spurt for July only?
I think the ethics tends to be around the occasional disciplinary write-up that our practice editor Richard Hattersley tends to put together. I believe that this particular one, a particularly popular article around ethics, was around an ACCA student who had perhaps misrepresented their qualifications for their employer, and so had been kicked off. So yeah, that was an extremely popular article. In July.
Okay, well, there's sort of the disciplinary incidents. We know they come along regularly and made it into the top trend here. But how are you preparing for those other compliance shocks? Are there specific projects you've got on the way, and directions you'll be taking with the coverage, and any tips you can pass on to the listeners?
Goodness. Well, I mean, they say a week is a long time in politics, but in the crazy world of compliance, it's practically an ice age. I mean, traditionally in August, Parliament packs off to the Algarve or their holiday home down in Cornwall, and so we don't tend to get a great deal of compliance news. But I mean, we've got this sort of perfect storm of compliance, from the sort of macro of leaving the European Union, a potential general election, making tax digital, through to more sort of prosaic matters of the reverse charge and the IR35 rules landing on the doormat, as it were. So yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on the subject at hand. What we've seen has been a steady rise in interest in articles we've done around the European Union, and I think that's largely because, and I think I mentioned this in the previous webinar, that we're actually getting to the nitty-gritty of what is actually going to happen. I mean, we saw previously on the site that we can publish things around scenario planning and how to prepare businesses for recession, what they might need to do, but obviously without specific legislation or scenarios in place, then it didn't really land with our audience, who after all are primarily accountants and finance professionals, and therefore like things in black and white. And so actually getting content that was interesting to them was fairly difficult. You'd either have the sort of usual flame wars between Remainers and Brexiteers that you find on pretty much every mainstream media publication, or it would just sink without trace. But recently, we've published a couple of bits and pieces around things like VAT in the European Union. There was a recent piece on what might happen to pensioners' personal allowance should Britain crash out without a deal. And as I say, it's those sort of real-world issues that actually are sort of bringing people back to the EU topic, as it were. But yeah, I mean, certainly. Sorry, John, go ahead.
Yeah, but it's also worth remembering that quite a lot of times accountants are the people who end up having to sort of clean up the mess or just shovel the work through to the tax department and the like. So I mean, we didn't have the meltdown maybe the traffic signals would suggest on the 7th of August or the week leading up to it. I think the profession just got its head down and got through got over that particular hurdle. I mean, if we and fortunately there aren't going to be the sort of penalties and things for non-compliance, because it's probably such a ropey system. But expect the same might happen around the euro. It will be just heads down trying to sort out the mess afterwards.
I do think you're right there, and actually, while there is a fair amount of pessimism around the economy generally, and what are the an exit deal or no deal, to quote Noel Edmonds, might mean, but actually for accountants, they're generally some of the first people that businesses go to for advice. So those who are geared up and ready are actually reaping the benefits of it at the moment.
Okay, and we don't want to preempt the September and October and even November IX webinars like this. I'm sure we'll have a lot more to say about Brexit and the political situation in the next few months, and maybe what I think the thing for people listening is to factor in now how you're going to tackle that. Is it I think we probably have to get over a lot of companies have avoided it as a toxic topic for coverage, but the practicalities will need some attention. Accountants have their heads down. They're trying to support their clients. Anything you as a vendor can do where it touches on your product or service, it's worth bearing in mind. Being that support for the customers is a good card to play. Before we get on to your other content plans, I'm just going to tip off the clients about another trend that's very noticeable during August on Accounting Web. Is we have this sort of classic dip where our overall traffic figures drop as everyone goes away on holiday. This is the quiet time of the year. But what we do get is much higher levels of engagement. So that's pretty, if you look at the blue charts of starting from early July, we just get much longer average times on site. So that's nearly 4 minutes. In fact, just the last day of August, people were getting up to close to 4 minutes on site compared to 3 minutes in mid-July there. So even though there's fewer people hitting the site and looking at the items, they spend a lot more time sort of debating things. And so this means it's a very good time to publish particular publish kind of long reads and reference content. Accountants will spend time with stuff if it's giving them value and informing them important areas. There was also a tactical tip that I included in our blog this month, is that in the last week of July, we also saw a very high search traffic for VAT flat rate scheme MTD software. So if you represent or work for a vendor who has that capability, in fact, Tom, this might be one we should write up as well, that would be a very good subject to put in front of people. I think it's something they want to solve. So I'll make that for a note for that article in technology coverage in the next month, but the door is open for a vendor to scoop Accounting Web on that one. So that's, let's say, good time for CPD content and reference material. But back to you, Tom. What's on your planning chart? We've mentioned all the compliance shocks we're expecting. The autumn financial event, I heard the Chief Secretary of the Treasury mention, but what other things are you concentrating on this month?
Well, indeed, we are somewhat at the mercy of political events. Should there be a general election, and what's been quite interesting is the new government's complete silence on any tax policies. Usually, the new regime will come in with a big axe and start again with tax policy. But so far nothing other than a couple of headline pledges. So that could be potentially interesting. On to more sort of accountancy-based things, I guess. I mean, we've got data coming out from our Accounting Excellence Award entries, so hundreds of firms, cutting-edge firms, telling us what they've been doing and why they should be winning one of our coveted gongs. So we've noticed that workflow has been a really interesting development. It's been mentioned in a lot of entries recently. I think, John, you were going to looking at putting something together for that.
Yep, I've talked to a couple of vendors, and the door is open to any others. I'm writing that over the next week or so. I will be talking to previous Accounting Excellence Award winner Sharon Pocock about how she structured a workflow to deal with her sort of customer and client service issues. So she'll give us her secrets as a past winner. And I think we have to thank HMRC and the government for this, because there's very clear from the entries I saw in the small firm category that a lot of practices were specifically thinking about and building workflows to deal with making tax digital. So that digital data feed, actually piping it from maybe the transaction capture through to the VAT return has become a working part of the leading practices now. So we'll try and pass that on, that wisdom on to other accountants. That's the philosophy of accounting excellence at work.
Indeed, and staying on that subject, there's also been a little bit of a rise in sort of content and digital marketing. We published one piece already this week on that particular subject, but more to come in that field. And our practice editor Richard Hattersley is also working on a revival of an old favourite on the site. So those of you who've been around the site a little while may remember the class of 2009, where we plucked out a handful of accounting firms who'd started in that particular year and followed their progress through. Indeed, one of the alumni from there, Della Hudson, is still writing for the site to this day. So Richard has his class of 2019 victims. Sorry, did I say victims? I meant subjects, and he'll be speaking with them over the next couple of weeks, and you'll be seeing that on the site very soon.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you. Waiting very patiently in the wings is Balma Claro, our Insight Exchange editor. Before I hand the screen over to her, I just say this is, do keep the questions coming in. And there's Susanna. Yep, Susanna's popped one in there. So do please respond there and keep the questions coming for Balma, Tom, or me. So meanwhile here, whoops, gone the wrong way. Oh, no, sorry, accounting excellence. Sorry, I've missed a section out. The accounting excellence insights. We talked about workflow. That's one of the more obscure entries. And just very quickly before we go to Balma, this is a classic situation where these are tracking what the people in the awards and in our software survey are telling us they're doing. So cloud has dipped. I think the thing we've taken from that is that you don't have to have a cloud system to comply with MTD. So that has fallen. But if you look down below the trend lines for practice management software, which is yellow, and for expense capture, which is green, they have both risen noticeably, which you would expect because they're tools that help firms comply with making tax digital. But the red line is generally other cloud add-ons have dipped, even though people are using expenses capture. So that shows that people don't have time for sort of non-MTD apps. And the orange line, that's kind of our indicator, that's finance, forecasting, planning and analysis. That has dipped as well. So again, that's a sort of quite forward-looking, cutting-edge activity. And this is what I mean by the MTD effect. Is when compliance dominates the consciousness of practitioners, they don't have enough time or energy to try other new things out. So that's what the chart is telling us. This isn't a vintage year for innovation, folks. It's heads down for MTD and all the other compliance nightmares. One very quick one that did pop out of the undergrowth along with workflow is fintech and funding advice. These two have been increasing. We kind of accelerated that blue line a little bit in the software survey because we started asking people about their banking apps. So things like Counting Up and Cash Plus are picking up users amongst accountants. But the red line is a trend line from the entries. That shows the percentage of practices who are offering funding advice. And that has kind of broken through the 20% barrier. So I think we're safe in making the assumption that the availability of fintech tools, like different funding things, is encouraging firms. Firms have got a new way that they can point their clients to sources of funding. So I'm sure we'll be returning to fintech in the future. But now, Balma, at last, I'm sorry, let me hand over to you and show us the secrets of the CMS.
Yeah, thank you, John. So I'm just going to share my screen now, and hopefully that will work. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, we're just going to take a look at how to upload an article to the CMS. So I have my article here. I'm just going to copy the content now. So this is the part of the article that I want to copy. And now I've already logged into my account, so I just need to go to my profile. and we'll see a few options on the left-hand side. So I'm going to go to write an industry update, and there we go, and start writing an industry insight. So now I'm just going to copy my content here. I've already copied the content, so I just need to paste it, and I have a few options. I'm going to go with paste from Word just because I have some formatting in there that I want to keep. So as you can see in the preview, I have all the links, which is what I wanted. So I'm just going to click on OK. And now I have all the content of my article in here, but I actually want to include an image as well. So I'm going to place my image right above the stand first. And I'm going to do that by clicking on Add Media. And I'm going to choose the image from my computer in here. Click on Next. And now I'm going to see a few options. So if my image came from iStock, for instance, I would add the image accreditation. In this case, I'm just going to add some text, which is for the search engine. So it's a little description of what the image is about. So I'm going to type in NAT podcast for No Accounting for Taste. And we click on Save. Now I'm going to go with content full width for the size of the image. And click on Submit. Now, the image is quite large, so it's going to be centered on the post. But what if the image was smaller? What if I wanted to have my image on the right-hand side of the page or on a different position? Then I can just double-click to see all the options. So the ones that you want to use are HSpace and VSpace. So for instance, if I were to assign a value of 100 for HSpace, you will see in the preview of the image in here how the image moves a bit to the right. And you can just select different values. Same if you wanted to have the image aligned with the text. We can align the image to the left or to the right, but I'm just gonna go with no set because I want to have the image above the text. And now I'm going to go back to my post to copy the title, and I'm going to paste it here and in the short title field. Now the title is a bit too long for the short title field, so I'm going to select the second part. So my short title is going to be what SMEs want from accountants. And now the only other thing that I need before I click on Save and Preview is the categorization. So I'm going to choose the most relevant topic. In this case, I'm going to choose general practice. And I'm going to add some tags of related topics and topics that have been covered in the podcast. So I'm going to choose marketing, client satisfaction, and I think, there we go, practice management. So now I have my 3 tags and I'm ready to go to Save and Preview. Because I want to see the preview of my article before I publish it. And here I have my image, all the text. And the only thing that I haven't done yet is actually, I haven't linked the podcast yet. I have forgotten about that. So I can just click on Edit to go back to the CMS. And I want to place my podcast here. So in order to embed the code, I just need to click on Embed External Media, which is the option that we have right next to Add Media, which is the previous option that we chose earlier to add the picture. So as you can see here, we have a list of all the platforms that are supported. So we can add videos from YouTube or Vimeo. We can have SoundCloud files, as in this case. So I want to have my podcast, so I'm going to go with SoundCloud. But you can be creative and you can add tweets, you can add Instagram posts. If you want to ask a question to your readers, you can use Typeform, Quizzer, etc. So you will want to look for the sharing option on each of those platforms. So for instance, on SoundCloud, in this case, I have my podcast here. So I'm going to go to share. And there are similar options on YouTube, Vimeo, and all those platforms. So I'm just gonna go to share and embed to copy my code. And now I can just go back to the CMS and click on OK. And now I have the preview. Now I have my iframe. I can't actually see the podcast, but that's just the preview. So now if I go back to save and preview, now my podcast is here as well. So there are a few things in here in the structure of this post that Google likes in terms of SEO. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail now, but there are some things such as the keywords that we've used, the formatting. So we've chosen H2 for the stand first and H3 for the subheading. We also have some internal links, external links. So we're going to talk a bit more about that in the next IX webinar. So make sure to join us to learn a bit more about that.
Great, thank you very much, Val. That's a good start. I didn't know the double click the picture trick, so even an old dumb like me can learn a new trick from you. So thank you very much for unveiling that. If you're watching, Balma will be back to talk about things like headings and quotes and anchors. There's other things but you can also investigate that yourself just by exploring the icons along the top of the menu within the content page. That's always worth doing with any software applications, as many viewers probably know. But it's just taking a little time to poke around and experiment. But Balma will be back next month to show you how and do more of that. In the meantime, if I've seen, have we got any questions in? I think we may not, but if Bristol can take back control from Balma, I'm looking at Balma's screen, so we'll just check in before we go that we haven't missed any questions. And let's go back and see. Oh, okay, Tom, can you got any final messages? Say from us, it's been sort of a long build up to August. I don't think we're not going to be kicking back on Accounting Web. I've had my holiday and I'm ready, so I'll be here writing about workflow and more articles and trends. There's a lot more data to analyze, so maybe I'll be back. We will preview the Software Excellence Awards a little bit next month, but without giving away any secrets. Yeah, so just check in finally. Balma, can you see any questions on the?
I don't think we have any questions at the moment. No.
Okay, well, I save them up if you're listening and you have a question for any of us on the content or on Inside Exchange. Al, myself, and Tom, the editor, and your client service managers, Hannah and Susanna, are always here to help. Thank you so much for watching this edition of the Insight Exchange webinar, and we very much look forward to seeing you here again. So thank you for watching, and goodbye from all of us.